In the past, I built this website, homebase.com. It hosted my podcast, Hang Out with Musicians. It is defunct. It doesn't work. The podcast doesn't work. I need to rebuild it. I'm rebuilding it on Urbit. In this episode, I talk about the basic tools that you use to make a website. We get into things like HTML, RSS feeds, using Sail, and dealing with a podcast inside of Urbit is a unique and odd thing. My name is Ben Brown, and I have a Patreon. I'm supported by these lovely folks around here. Over there, for $2 a month or $15 a month, you can help me make the podcast. More importantly, half of it will go to my favorite charity, Give Directly. Enjoy the video. Maybe I don't need to spoil the mystery of what Sail is. There's our tools: HTML to make the elements, the CSS to style it, to make it look nice. We're gonna need to build that RSS feed. It's going to be shockingly similar to an HTML. That's gonna be our podcast. In the Urbit world, Sail, we're gonna be using a thing called Mast, which is going to make our Sail more powerful. And we might need to throw in what a manx is because it will be relevant to Sail, RSS, and HTML. These very cohesive concepts that we're gonna get into. So let's do HTML. Woo! And with this, I'm going to tell a story because this is really the history of my involvement in coding. I went to music school. There was a time that I was traveling back and forth between Texas and Utah. I know musicians in Texas and I know musicians in Utah because I went to music schools in both of those. And on the drive up there, I actually visited with one of my brother's good friends who's done very well in the tech world. He went nerdy and didn't look back. I remember I'd played some guitar for him, and eventually I was like talking a little bit about coding stuff, and he was like, "Oh, yeah, well, this is where you'd start. Let me show you a thing." He opened up just like a little text editor like this. He wrote down this like HTML, and then body. On HTML, I got a body. Like the body, do this header thing. Hello world. Boingo. And he saved it and he pulled it up on the browser. That didn't work because text editor has gotten too smart for its own britches. Instead, I'm going to open them. I'm going to make a thing called index.html, and I'm going to save this. And it exists right here. I'm just going to double click it. You see it open up. And by golly, we got ourselves a website. It says hello world and Boingo. How simple, how fantastic. That's like the simplest place to start with coding on the internet. Let's just break this down really quickly. The way that I understand it is HTML is boxes inside of boxes inside of boxes. It's very much like our nested situation. If you're watching lots of things, there's the HTML. Inside of that is the body. And inside of that, I have this header that happens to say hello world. So H1 is header because, you don't want to write header. You're gonna write a lot of that stuff. And then this is like paragraph text, I think I call it. I think of it like that. I don't know if that's what it is, but this P tag is inside of there. Yeah, that's like your nested structure. You can put as many things inside of this body as you want. Another way to write that is you have your HTML document. Inside of that is another box of the body. And then inside the body, you have hello world, boingo. So boxes inside of boxes inside of boxes. You can keep on nesting these things. It's a very like simple nesting situation. While the HTML and the body, generally like they have the same outer box. Each of these elements, like hello world here, they have kind of like this box is really relevant because they have a height, they have a width, this font size and everything. Like that's a part of the styling, which we'll get into. Let's take a look at what it has to say for itself. So I just right click, inspect. And wouldn't you know it, we got HTML. We're ignoring head for a bit. Inside the HTML, we can open it up. And we got the things that we wrote. And we can even see these highlights that are happening, I guess up here. Everything's highlighted with HTML. Nothing with head because it's not a thing. And then inside the HTML is this body. And then hello world has its own situation, and boing has its own little box. Boxes inside of boxes inside of boxes. Inside here, I'm going to come in here and add button form button. So I've added an A thing. So to give you some vernacular, these little things, that's a tag. That with a slash is an end tag. It's just to tell you start and beginning. Here's a start and beginning of the box, so you can nest things in and out. So I have these header tags, H1, P paragraph tags, A should be a link tag, and form should be another tag. Let's see. There we go. Must have done something weird with A. Href is equal to... There we go. I've added more things inside of body. One of them is just a link that I can click to. You've seen links before. Oddly enough, like its box is like tiny compared to Boingo. And I've got a form. Inside of that form, I have a button that can button me. I press that button. Let me do one more thing for the form. I'm back at it here. You also have this input form. Tell me more. Here's my email, buddy. And you can press the button and submit it. This, well, this header is sorry, but, no, hey, hush, are you okay? Whoa, break these things coming in and out like that. Yar. Here's some examples. Header is text, P is text, a tag is a link, so it can send you somewhere else. And a form is something where you can give stuff to the website, or if we're the website, we can get things brought to us. Yes, HTML, those are the elements. Simple. I think it's really intuitive. You get it, you can sit down, and it's like, oh, I can type these things into an editor and save it, and then pull it up in a browser, and then it works. Yeah, it does. It actually does. That's HTML. Rapidly moving forward. CSS, which is, hey, I don't want these things to be writing up on the left side and then like being all squished together. I want this to look a little bit nicer. Go back to inspecting. You end up creating another file. And in this file, you're going to name the thing that you want to change. Let's say P. We're going to take P. I want the aspect of P, which is going to be in these squirrely brackets, I hear them referred to. I'm going to say something about it that I want it to change, like its color. And I'm going to say what it should be changed into. And it's going to have all this extra junk on it. Name the tag, write down what you want to change. It's going to have a name and then what you want to change it to. This is also intuitive. I think people just get this. Let's take the H1. I want it to be like incredibly large. I just want to take the font size and I want to make it 100-point font. And one of the things that's bothering me is this link tag. Like, I don't like that it's sitting right on top of this thing. So I'm going to give it padding, bottom, give it like 14-point font. Usually you measure things in pixels and whatnot, but I think it's easier for people to see this. Do I want to do that? I don't know about that. Let's try making style.css. Let's say P, color red. Really nice to see the word red and blue. 1 curly bracket, font size, and I think it's padding bottom. All right, save. You'd make a document, it would look like this. You need to like connect it into the HTML somehow. I'm not gonna do it like that. I'm actually going to go into each of these things. Inside the inspector, you have styles. H1, I'm gonna tell it to be font size 100 points. Boom, big, like it. In fact, I like it not that much. Notice in the HTML, I have this new thing. It says style. Let me change it to be like this. So now we have this thing called an attribute. So inside the tag, we have style. Style equals quotes. I'm gonna write some stuff in here that you're gonna understand. Let's add style for P, which was color red. Look at it. Fancy pantsy. And press me. We're gonna do padding bottom. Yeah, padding bottom, 14-point, which is not enough to matter. What's wrong with you? I guess what I wanna do is I wanna give it a height. With this line height, normal. Yeah, right, well, it's so simple. It's so easy. I finally got the padding that I wanted. I wanted this link to have a nice space in between it. Apparently links don't automatically get these boxes. No. I was wrong about a couple of things. This is probably a good point. Yes, I end up having a lot of control, like what type of font, whether it's centered or not. I can take these boxes inside of boxes, shape them and move them around, massage things. It works. It works. CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheet. You're trying to add these styles to each of these elements as you need to, and it's very simple. Name the tag, have something that you want to change, as long as you know the name of it, and as long as you know the options, and as long as it works. you can make it happen. But, CSS is really powerful. It's really cool. Let's go to, this is CodePen. CodePen is cool for working on these things because it'll give you a place to write your HTML, give you a place to write your CSS, and then we're not going to talk about JavaScript. Some of these things can start looking maybe a little bit familiar to you. There's a lot of stuff that you can do with CSS. This guy has created this little menu. This is all CSS. This is really impressive, by the way, the mouse going over things and finding these menus. That's fun. Ooh, 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 ooh. It's like stepping your toes into coding. Look at that. Wow, that pufferfish. That's beyond the scope of a website. That's CSS. What are the other tools? Yes. The RSS feed. RSS. And because we already talked about it, go to podcast. Here, you have the RSS feed. If you don't know, what you're supposed to do is come over here and just copy the link, right? You copy where it is, then you put that inside of an RSS reader. It's going to ask for your RSS feed, the URL for the RSS feed. That's what you do. You give it the URL of this sucker. It's basically waiting to see if anything new shows up. It'll keep on grabbing the new episode, the syndication. Here, if you get feed, here's a aggregate, discover, publish web feeds with all these things. Add a subscription, add a podcast. URL is extra.home.art/home/cast. Do you think it wants the HTTP version? I'm fancy. Hang out with musicians. Try. Feed for the very first time. Hang out with musicians. This is the link that the channel goes to, which should be this page. It tells me the last time it went to go see if it had updated a syndicate. Man, this is really great. Yeah, all the way from the beginning. Robert Linton. That is feed. If you type in Dister Migrev Dulceg, he's also got this text editor. I also heard that this is nice. And feeds. Solid. Very impressive. So impressive. I'm not saying so as saying mediocre. I mean really, really impressive. Really so impressive. If we take a look inside of that, we have this gibberish. And it is just so hard to see. Let's not raw dog this one. All right, well, back over here with the HTML, this is going to end up seeming really, really similar. With the RSS feed, check it out. RSS/RSS. Inside of the RSS, you need to explain your channel, which is your podcast. Hang Out with Musicians podcast. And inside the channel, you have an item, and then you have the next item. And then if you want to release another item, you release another item. Bingo. Just like that. This is simplified for sure, but you have your RSS channel, and inside it are all the different items, and you just... If you want to release anything, you need to update this RSS feed with one more thing, one more item, and then that gets pushed out to everybody. I think you end up adding it on the top. Of course, you're not going to do that because that's what computers are here for. Computers are supposed to do the boring stuff that people don't want to do. That's what computers are for. It's strikingly similar to an HTML. So instead of an HTML document, it's an RSS. Instead of a body of a page, it's a channel. Instead of these different elements, item. Pretty dang simple. If I was to show you more full-blown version, you have this XML here. XML is the larger thing that contains RSS and HTML. XML is the rectangle of the HTML boxes, and the RSS, their boxes. They're the larger umbrella category. A really basic version of that, a little bit more fleshed out. Here is our channel. It has a title, Ajax and XUL. It has a link, so something about clicking on it goes to a link. You need a description for it, an image. You gotta go grab the image from somewhere, so it has a URL, and then it has a link, so if you click on the image, it can take you somewhere. And then, inside the channel, you have your item. There's two items right here. First item, news of today, and it links out to something. It has a description. And then the next item, news of tomorrow. That's a simple RSS feed. Did I have a not so simple one? Well, just to flash this nightmare back up on the screen, this is the RSS feed for Home as it currently exists, as crafted by Squarespace. Notice XML version stuff, this RSS feed inside of RSS. Just like a style, like style equals, RSS has these other things inside of it. Content equals this stuff. Getting messy. That's the end of the RSS there. And you have your channel. Channel has your title. Let's see, can I find an item? Find item. And then we got ourselves the end of an item tag. And so this isn't for humans. No need to bend your brain to understand all of that. And the skies are gray. Whoa, quesadilla. Preferred spicy dicey. So far we figured out a little bit of how HTML, CSS, RSS fits into this thing. We need to work all that together to make this website. If we look at what we currently have, we got our HTML. It's got some extra things in it because of Mast, and we'll get to that. We got our body, we have our main, just like body. Body can refer to just the entire page itself. Main is going to refer to, I guess, the same kind of thing. I don't know. It's kind of a convention. These tags can almost be arbitrary. Like you can almost name them like whatever. And look at there. I mean, like it no longer has the style. So it does the default, like everything to the left, HTML style. You can name a tag whatever you want and put things into it. But I had main, and main had all this CSS stuff over here. So that's why it's able to display in the middle. We've got our header. We've got a little, not exactly header. And then I've built in, same with main, I've got a section. This is so that I can develop a section, and a section steps through each season of the podcast and displays it. And HR is just this like, it's like that little line that breaks it apart there. Ultimately, this should either be an image or an A tag, right? To be links and stuff. A little dooey. That catches you up to what the site is, the page that I'm displaying. To try to bridge that gap between what we just learned about HTML, bringing that into Urbit, I'm going to need to work on a few things in the dojo. So the dojo is Urbit's terminal. When I was first trying to figure this thing out, I grabbed all of the RSS feed from Homebase and just plugged it in and then tried to manipulate it in some kind of way. I'm not going to do that. Let me show you this, right? Don't worry too much about this. Okay, this should look familiar. HTML, body, closing tag of the body, closing tag of the HTML. I have it sitting inside of these single quotes, soaks. These parentheses are, there's a thing called DXML HTML. I'm going to feed it this thing. Like how I think about coding, it's going to eat something and it's going to poop it out. The system is going to find in HTML, it's going to find this HTML thing. Inside of it, there's a thing called DXML. Take that. That's something that I can put this text into, feed it into it, show me what poops out. Okay, let's see what happens. All right, what do we got here? Well, we've got our HTML tag and our body tag. But now it's in this like different kind of formation. Let's just work from bracket to bracket. Here's these two brackets on the outside, right? They're containing this little squirrely guy, and then they're containing this next set of brackets, which has a thing called G, a thing called C. G is I was saying brackets, I'm gonna now call them cells. It has a cell, and it has a thing in it called N, which is currently HTML. Looks familiar. And a thing called A, which currently is a squiggly. Squiggly means nothing. It's nothing. It's not even the number 0. It's nothing. C comes in here, even though I just explained that squiggly means nothing. It has this thing where it's squiggly outside of a cell. I'm just going to do some hand waving and say that squiggly on the outside, which is, we call it sig. That sig on the outside means that this cell that it's outside of is a list. What it means is we could have this cell on the inside, which is, it has a G and it has a C. we could have a lot more of those. So we could have a GC, 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 and it could keep on going. You might be able to start getting the hint of this nesting that's maybe becoming familiar in some of these things. But inside of G, you have in, which has a thing called body. This is a % body, and A, which is empty. So this representation, this text is HTML. When you feed it into the DXML is to take XML and to bring it into Urbit. And, you can find it in the HTML section because there's a lot of other things that can eat stuff that you'll want to eat things that are HTML related inside of it. And what comes out when you do give it HTML is a representation like this. And this is a Urbit representation. Sometimes you call things like XML Earth stuff. You'd call things like this Mars stuff because Urbit is like Martian computing, just to catch you up on the vernacular here. Let's make it a little bit more complicated and perhaps we'll understand what's going on a little bit better. We'll just add one more thing. Hello world. H1. All right, well that's... Did it like that? Would it be a little bit better? Yeah. This might aid understanding it a little bit better. Down this whole block here is our Mars representation of an XML. They have an HTML tag, it has a body tag, and it has an H1 tag. Inside of H1, it has this like C thing. So C, you're not seeing the C equals like you did in the last one, but C is equal to this list of G and C, which is equal to the list of G and C, which is equal to this list of G, A, N, and then V finally. So we have this thing called G in it. This is a cell, and it has in. In is currently, this is nothing. So similar to the squiggly being nothing. Yeah, if you notice it's in pattern here, HTML tag, body tag, H1 tag. And this one is a tag that doesn't have a name. That's what that $ is. This one doesn't have a name, but it does, instead of these empty nothing A's, this one happens to have an A, and that A can be a list of things. It's got an N and a V, and the V is the text that I put inside of the H1. This is a nested thing. It can be as big and arbitrary as you want it to be. Inside of it, you can have A stands for attributes. It's similar to like the style situation. Let's see if I was going to make it even more complicated. Style is font size, point. Let's see how that looks. We got our HTML. We got our body. We have inside a body, it has content, this H1. H1, inside of this attribute, there is one. There's a style attribute. Here's the value of it. That's what V stands for. And then it also has content, which doesn't have a name. It has one attribute, which doesn't have a name, but has a value. Yes. So this is the Martian representation of XML, HTML. It'll be the same for RSS, right? Yeah. Making sense? So this stuff is the manx. That's what this stuff is. Why did it need to be done that way? Like, why bother with the manx? Like, why don't I just bring in this text? Why don't I just bring that in and then serve it up? And some people do that. Some people are like, it doesn't matter. Like, I'm just going to take what the HTML, XML is. I'm just going to save it as just like text, send it as text. The browser will understand what I'm saying when I do that. The trick is the computer doesn't have access to all the things inside of it when it's just sitting as text like that. It's unstructured. There's no going into it, unfolding it. There's no being like, step through this and change these things. When it's in any structure at all, you're able to get into it, manipulate it. All these things have names. You can call them and bring them and transform them and stuff like that. That's like the huge benefit of bringing it into a Urbit setting, making it this Urbit shape that can be grabbed. That's a manx. Beep boop. Beep boop. I think it's time at this point to look at, my website is serving HTML, my little fake website here. You see it in the browser, this HTML stuff that we understand. What does that look like inside of Urbit? Does it look like this Manx stuff? Tune in right now. App, site, home, sale.home. We can start to recognize this stuff now, especially since we've seen it in all kinds of different lights. Now we can make a little bit of a comparison. This is my sale file. Notice this thing, right? That's important. We got the HTML tag is right there. Body tag, What about the main? We got the main. We got H1. We have a section like that. Yeah, so trying to answer what does HTML look like inside of Urbit. The answer is these guys. Yeah, for those who know, notice this strange little thing here. I mentioned manx earlier. This strange little thing, manx, that's where it's coming in. This thing right there that guarantees everything below it is a manx. It's in the shape of a manx. That is basic Hoon stuff. If you want to learn basic Hoon, I'm going to totally skip that. But if you want to learn basic Hoon, I would recommend Hoon School Live. I was going to wear the t-shirt today, but that was yesterday. Okay, I'm going to go check on my puppy. Nellers, your sad whimpers are